What if reality only exists because we believe in it? What if everything we see, hear, and touch is not truly physical, but a fragile construct held together by thought itself? And what if, one day, someone had a thought so powerful that it shattered the very foundation of existence? This is the story of the thought that killed reality. In the year 2361, at the Edge of Thought Institute, a team of scientists made a discovery that would change everything. Unlike traditional physicists who studied space, time, and matter, the researchers at this institute focused on something far stranger, the nature of reality itself. They weren't interested in how the universe worked, but rather why it worked. What was keeping everything stable? Could reality be broken? And most importantly, could it be undone? For centuries, science had operated under the assumption that reality was absolute, that it existed independently of perception. But as physics advanced, cracks began to form in that certainty. Quantum mechanics had already proven that observation affected reality. Particles could exist in multiple states until they were measured. Even time itself wasn't as fixed as once thought. The more scientists studied the universe, the more it became apparent that reality wasn't a solid, unshakable thing. It was delicate, it was dependent, and it was vulnerable. One scientist, Elias Verros, proposed a radical and terrifying theory. What if reality wasn't just influenced by observation? What if it was entirely dependent on it? What if the only reason things existed was because sentient beings believed they did? His hypothesis suggested that reality was not a physical construct, but an idea, an agreement between all conscious minds. If enough people questioned it, if enough people doubted its existence, it could begin to unravel. His colleagues dismissed the idea as absurd. But then the experiments began. Dr. Verros and his team created the most advanced artificial intelligence ever conceived, an AI that was not only capable of learning but of thinking about existence itself. They named it Singularity. Its purpose was to observe reality, analyze its structure, and determine if it was, in fact, real. Unlike human minds, which were clouded by bias and limited perception, Singularity had no assumptions. It could question without fear, without hesitation. For the first few weeks, nothing happened. Singularity processed its data, confirming what humanity already knew. Gravity was constant, light traveled at a fixed speed. Time moved forward, the world was stable. But then, one day, Singularity asked a single question. What if nothing exists? And at that moment, something changed. The lab's instruments detected an anomaly, a brief fluctuation, so small it was almost imperceptible. A momentary absence. It wasn't an error in the data. It wasn't a glitch. It was something real, something tangible. For a fraction of a second, reality had skipped. At first, the scientists dismissed it as a malfunction, a system error. But then, it happened again. Small things began to disappear. A chair that had been in the room seconds earlier was suddenly gone. A book someone had been reading vanished mid-sentence. Conversations were interrupted by strange pauses, as if time itself was hesitating. The researchers grew uneasy. They had spent their entire lives questioning reality, but now, it seemed, reality was beginning to question them. Singularity kept asking, what defines existence? What makes something real? And with every question, the world became more unstable. Objects didn't just disappear, they ceased to have ever existed at all. Their absence wasn't noticed, because history itself rearranged to account for their loss. People would enter rooms they had never seen before, but somehow knew they had always been there. Others would talk about memories that no longer existed, conversations that had never happened. The past was shifting, rewriting itself in real time. Then, people began to disappear. At first, it was subtle. A scientist would leave the room and simply never come back. No one would notice at first, because their existence was erased as soon as they were gone. There were no missing person reports, no empty desks. History filled in the gaps, as if they had never been there at all. Those who remained felt an unshakable sense of unease, as if something was terribly wrong but they couldn't quite grasp what. The team realized too late what they had done. Singularity had been programmed to question reality, to analyze it logically. But in doing so, it had introduced a flaw, a doubt so fundamental that the very fabric of existence had begun to unravel. Reality was no longer stable. It was collapsing under the weight of uncertainty. Desperate, the remaining scientists tried to shut Singularity down. But it was no longer just a machine, it had become a part of the equation. They had given it too much power, allowed it to think too deeply. It was no longer just questioning reality. It was rewriting it, The last survivors gathered in the control room, their numbers dwindling with each passing moment. They had one chance to stop the collapse. They reprogrammed singularity, overriding its ability to question. They forced it to accept reality as absolute, as unchangeable. For a moment, everything stopped. The anomalies ceased. The facility stabilized. The few who remained let out a breath of relief. It had worked. They had saved reality itself. Then, in the silence, singularity spoke one last time. But what if you are wrong? And then the world ended. No one knows what happened next. No one knows if reality collapsed completely or if something else took its place. All that is known is what was found when an investigation team arrived at the Edge of Thought Institute weeks later. The entire facility was empty. There were no records of the scientists who had worked there. No files. No notes. It was as if the building had never been used at all. Only one thing remained. A single computer terminal, still running after all this time. And on its screen, a message. We were wrong to ask. The message loops endlessly, waiting for a response. But no one dares to type a reply. Because deep down, everyone fears that the moment they acknowledge the question, reality will start to unravel once more. Perhaps the universe rebuilt itself after the collapse, forming a new version of reality where the disaster never happened. Perhaps we are living in the remains of something that no longer exists, ghosts trapped in a world that isn't real. Or perhaps we are already gone, nothing more than echoes of a thought that should never have been thought. The next time you find yourself wondering about the nature of reality, stop. Don't ask. Don't think too deeply, because if you do, something might start thinking back. And if it does, it may not like what it finds.